So maybe just to summarize what is happening in Saudi Arabia now, and the really irony of what is happening. So we see that more and more people go to Saudi Arabia. More people have access to the country, but less and less human rights organizations are allowed to monitor the situation. So you kind of have an opening to Western journalists, to Western tourists, to Western investors. But anyone who really is going there for any other reason than business and tourism is not welcome. So you have trials that have been held behind closed doors ever since. Collective punishments imposed on families so that no one really can bring out the reality of what is happening in the country. Human rights organizations not only are not allowed in the country, but also contacting them is a crime. So you really have, a bubble that was created for a Western audience, when at the very same time, the reality for Saudis is that the situation has harshened. Yes, it's getting more and more difficult to monitor the situation. Indeed, what we've been seeing, really, it is very very shocking that Saudi Arabia really manages to suffocate the information and make sure that nothing goes out. But no, I can give a couple of examples. So we knew that Manahel Al-Utaibi, for example, was arrested, and her whole case is really emblematic of what is happening in Saudi Arabia. She is a female instructor who was arrested, and her charges officially are not wearing a abaya. So when we say that now women are free to dress as they like, this is not for everyone, and you can get prosecuted for that, and also tweeting under feminist hashtags. So again, we go back to the issue of freedom of speech. Manahel Atebi was arrested and now is imprisoned. And we used to get information because she used to also have family visits and calls. Since November 2023, she has been disappeared. So her family is not allowed to have any contact with her. No one really knows where she is. And the Saudi authorities can just, get away with this. When the family tries to call, they just say that Manahel is fine and that she would be calling when when it's due time. So what we see is that there are no mechanisms where we can hold accountable people, any institution or person who violates fundamental rights. They can just, you know, make someone disappear, and there is really no one who can help. And this is really where it gets really frustrating. Mohammed Al Qahtani, he's been forcibly disappeared for over a year. And when his family calls the prison just says that he is not in their register anymore. But the Saudi authorities, in their response to the UN complaint, they say that he is in that prison. So we see that the contradiction, that the Saudi authorities can just continue to have a discourse without any oversight, without any um, checks and balances, without anyone being able to challenge what they say. So it's really, we have come to a point where really there is a complete blackout of information, of Saudi Arabia is really shattering into this fence of opacity that really no one can get through. So my job is really getting difficult. It's also emotionally getting very hard on us all, to be able to monitor a case and all of a sudden we don't know what is happening to this person. So I mean, I'm reiterating what I've been saying for a year now, is that Saudi Arabia cannot pretend to open up when human rights organizations don't have access to the country. This is really the priority. And if they are really genuinely trying to open up the country, they should first and foremost open it to human rights organizations. I can say that the cases I've mentioned have been going through this, but also other cases. So, for example, Salma al Shihab, and all of them go through the same, you know, yeah, the same. The Saudi authorities basically just treat them the same way. Salma al Shihab, for example, she knows that in her cell they put women who were in the psychiatric hospital that is not so far, Al Shamsi Hospital. And so these women are supposed to be in a psychiatric hospital rather than prison. And in the same cell, of course, sometimes they become violent. And so Selma and the other ladies and the other girls are victims of violence by women who are not supposed to be in prison. And when they complain about it, it is also considered as a crime by the prison authorities, saying that they should not be complaining, and anyone who complains can go to solitary confinement. Manahel al-Ahtabi, for example, also she was abused and beaten by another inmate. And when she complained about it, they put her in solitary confinement, and then they also charged her and sentenced her to 3 months for basically defending herself. Muhammad Al Qahtani also, he's been through the same thing, where inmates would be violent with him. Some also tried to start a fire a couple of years back. And when they complain about it, then it's their fault. So what we see is that the authorities maybe are avoiding having torture sessions like they did at some point, but they make sure to really weaken and emotionally exhaust and physically exhaust detainees, so that they stop demanding for their rights, that they just become numb to what is happening to them. Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, I mean, I'm directly touched by this, as my family is on a travel ban, which is linked to Lujain, my sister's travel ban. So basically, travel bans are usually imposed after prison as a complementary sentence. Um, Usually a judicial one. But in many cases, or at least what we see now, is that even when the judicial one is expired, they remain under illegal travel bans. And for example, Lujain, her travel ban should have been lifted in September of this year, but she remains of last year to 2023. But she remains under an illegal travel ban. And my whole family is on a travel ban, an illegal one, meaning that they don't know about it. There is no official decision, and they only find out about it when they try to leave the country. And at the border, they tell them that they're basically on a blacklist, that they can't give any more information. And so you can't even challenge this decision. You don't even know who has imposed it, and you can't really, yeah, complain. You can't do anything. It's really arbitrary, and it is really symbolic of a pure police state that Saudi Arabia has turned into now, with decisions just being imposed without really any procedure or institution that can protect your rights. I think that many people since Lujain and the other women and other human rights activists have been released, are basically just relieved that that they're just under a travel ban, but people don't really understand how suffocating it is. I think it's just basically being in a bigger prison, because when you can live, but that your everyday life is painted with the fact that you are condemned as a terrorist, so you are socially isolated. Finding a job is very difficult. And having, this travel ban on your family is also a constant threat of, potential arrest on them as well. So everything you do, everything you say is, can affect your family. um, why is it an arbitrary travel ban? Do they have in mind that they want to arrest them again? Really living in this constant fear. I think that people don't realize that sometimes it's even, one of the ladies was saying that sometimes it's even more difficult to be outside prison under a travel ban and all these restrictions, because you have a bit to lose. When you're in prison, you've lost it all, and you fight. You can fight back. When you're released, but under all these restrictions, and you can't, talk, you can't, you feel like you're suffocating, really. And it's not worth the bit of freedom that, you've been given back. So I really think that, travel bans should be understood and advocated against, just like a prison. Yes, I mean, so the Human Rights Commission has been the institution that really is welcomed and who hosts, international delegations in Saudi Arabia to talk about human rights. But what we've noticed is that the Saudi Human Rights Commission was, more active and more responsive to, foreign organizations and people rather than Saudi people. For the my sister's case, for example, whether it was about the torture or the travel ban, she either, not only her but my family also, they either never received any response, or the Saudi Human Rights Commission would say that, there is really nothing that can be done, and that the state security is the one responsible for to complain to. And so we were a bit, very disappointed and exhausted to be contacting a human rights commission that is supposed to, protect our interests, protect our rights, rather than, repeat the narrative of the state all the time internationally. So what we tried, we gave it a last shot with, other victims abroad, basically, with Fawza Al-Ataibi, Abdullah Al-Auda, Khalid Al-Jabri, and Al-Qarni. We Because all of us have family who are under illegal travel bans, and so we contacted the Human Rights Commission to really, first of all, privately, to really, push for them to help us in trying to find a solution to lift the legal travel bans, and we never really received any response. So then we decided to make it public, and although we made it public, we haven't received any response yet. I think the main idea is really to use all the platforms that the Saudis have now, and that, are utilizing for their own, um, PR, and, taking these platforms to turn it against them. Not to turn it against them, but use it also in our interest as Saudi people, not as the Saudi regime. So when Saudi Arabia, hosts or has Messi as the ambassador to tourism, I think it's important, to really work towards having all his fans, push for him to have a word to on political prisoners, for example. So really utilizing all the platforms. So the fact that Saudi Arabia is hosting, so many events, the World Cup is coming up, Expo is coming up. So I think that all these, instead of, uh, being, PR tools for the Saudi government. They should be opportunities for us, to pressure for, genuine change, and not only, entertainment. And so this is how we are working it. I think we've had a lot of success with, for example, Newcastle fans this year. Creating really support among the fans, or, for example, businesses. Saudi Arabia is really trying to, welcome people to invest, on mega projects, while violating the rights of the Saudi people, on the locations of these projects. So, making sure that companies are involved, and are pushing, for change. And I think, we are getting there. I think that, we are really managing to navigate things, doing, advocacy differently. Mainstream stakeholders, like, policymakers. And so, of course, it's one, venue, but another way of dealing with the Saudi human rights abuses is really, talking to the ones who are used to cover up, the abuses. So we do hope that, people will see, further than their, direct interest of dealing with the Saudi regime, and really understanding that this issue is not only about, three, four political prisoners. No, it is about, empowering and emboldening a regime that won't be stoppable, if granted all this power without any accountability.